Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have an interesting guest and an interesting topic. So let me begin with what the topic is going to be. We will be discussing a very interesting situation, an interesting and stressful situation that took place where languages come in contact and we find that one word makes a huge difference. So before we get into talking about the flights, I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. It's Captain Alex Perez. Let me tell you just a little bit about Captain Alex. First of all, full disclosure, Captain Alex is a very good friend of mine. Captain Alex began flying for the airline Aeromexico when he was 22 years old. Started flying the DC-9, flew the MD-80 and the DC-8, then the Boeing 767. And for the last few years of his career, Captain Alex, who was trained amongst the first in his airline on the 787 Dreamliner, and he flew that both over the Atlantic and over the Pacific. So Captain Alex has a storied aviation career, but there's more. All the while that Captain Alex was flying, Captain Alex was pursuing his other passion, and that is cultural anthropology. Captain Alex has a master's degree in cultural anthropology, and his thesis was written about the American 965 crash in Cali, Colombia. And it makes for very interesting reading. So welcome, Captain Alex.
Thank you. What a nice welcome. Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you, everybody.
So what we're going to talk about are two aircraft situations that are similar in many respects, but there is a key difference. And I think you'll find that that key difference is something that when we're aware of it, we can learn quite a bit, and it can affect how we perform our jobs. So this is a very important topic. The first aircraft that we're going to be talking about is TAM 8078. TAM is the Brazilian airline, and we're going to be talking about the flight into New York's JFK Airport. And as the aircraft is on final for runway, I believe it's 22 left, they receive an indication from the tower controller that the landing gear is sideways. Okay, so there's where the incident starts. Captain Alex, maybe you could talk a little bit about it from that point.
Yes, thank you again. Now, just one thing I must say that English is my second language. So Spanish is my first language. So Rich, if you notice that I'm not able to communicate what I want to communicate, hopefully,
Okay.
please let me know, okay?
Sure.
So I could rephrase or somehow explain it again.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, and second, but also very important, is my respect to both crews. They did both a good job. This is not about crews. This is about language. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Is when language become in contact in very specific and complex context. This is what it is about. Okay. So I may start by saying that the TAM 8078 was approaching New York when they noticed a announcement in their ECAM saying that the nose wheel steer fault. That was the announcement. So interesting, they declare a PAN and short final, and the first interaction that start, kind of irregular interactions during all the process is that they declare a PAN and the controller did not understood at John F. Kennedy what PAN means.
Yeah,
And-
Alex, the issue with that is, although it is certainly in the FAA's documentation, the controllers learn what it is. It's not used in the United States hardly at all. So it's very rare when you hear it. So the controller probably hearing it went, I don't know what they're saying. So there's where we-
Exactly. So maybe I guess this lack of understanding in part of the controller start to put some stress and some you know, kind of environment in which
You know, Alex, I'm thinking of the Swiss cheese model, and maybe this is the first slice of cheese, the first little thing where there's that hole. And it's the lack of understanding by the controller of what the pilot has just said and what it meant.
Yes, exactly. So the once they did this go around because of that announcement that I said, and trying to tell to the controller that they were on an urgent, which PAN means urgent, an urgent situation.
Right.
And having not received, you know, the feedback or the response they expected, then they received, they were told by the ATC that the nose wheel appeared to be pointing sideways. And this is very interesting about this word. In fact, I didn't know the meaning of that word until I saw that news on the TV. I'm talking about now of the JetBlue. Do you remember, Rich?
Yeah.
The JetBlue?
Yeah, the second aircraft that we'll be discussing, in their case, the nose wheel was sideways, 90 degrees out of alignment, and it stayed that way.
Exactly. So that's the first time I knew about this word. That was in early 2012. I'm sorry, 2012. And I say, sideways. What does that mean? Okay, it means that the nose wheel, instead of be aligned, is this way. So that means sideways. Okay. So the crew, the TAM, the Brazilian crew, whose, by the way, I may say, they speak Portuguese, because that's the national language they speak at Brazil, Portuguese. It is my hypothesis, but I strongly believe they did not understand the meaning of the word sideways.
Right.
And as a consequence, because they go around the first time, they try to approach the second time, and again the ATC controller, being in final approach again, tell them that so this time the controller said there is something wrong with your nose landing gear. So that easy to understand. Oh, something wrong. So they decided to go second go around.
Okay, good. So we have the first go around primarily because of the fault indication they received in the cockpit.
Exactly.
The second go around is the wording that the controller used is something is wrong, and they understood that. Now they still don't know for sure what it is. They know something with the nose gear, but that's kind of where they are, right?
Exactly. So they on the second go around, if you hear the recordings, for me it's very clear that they was not able to compare or to I think it's the word reconcile, which to reconcile two different sources of information. One, the ATC, who saw that the wheel was in this position, and another, their announcement in the ECAM, in the cockpit, that you said that there is a fault in the steering. So they were more preoccupied about landing and to not be able to exit the aircraft.
Right, and I remember them saying, and also the runway, because they were saying, we will maintain the runway,
Exactly.
which, you know, is not exactly how we would put that. We would say, I will remain on the runway, something like that. But I think the controllers did understand that because they read back the, okay, understand you may need to tow off the runway and you'll be staying on the runway, that kind of thing. So I think they did understand that, but again, it's not the normal phrase that they hear.
Yeah. So just to finish all this event, I may say that because of that incapability to reconcile both informations, they decided to land finally. They say, okay, let's do it. Of course, between all these, you know, all this flying around and coming back and go around and then again, they were full of uncertainties, complexity of the situation, and of course, stress, okay? But most important to understand, and this is when I'm going to finish this conversation about this slide, is that that they because of the lack of understanding of the situation and the incapability to reconcile both information, they were not able to plan ahead any contingencies, okay, that could show up at the very end when landing an aircraft, when you have the nose wheel in this position.
Had they understood from the beginning what the problem was, I'm sure their response would have been different.
Exactly.
They didn't know. Sure. They thought it was, they believed all the way to touching down that the problem was something to do with the nose wheel steering, even though the controller had said, oh, it's sideways, it's cocked 90 degrees, all phrases they didn't understand.
Exactly. And okay, and let me say one more thing. The captain, according to what you heard in the recording, he speaks good English.
Sure.
I mean, we're not talking about a guy who say what, say again, or you know, things like usually I hear a lot because I do a lot of tests here in Mexico. No. On the contrary, the captain radio and get in interaction with the ATC at least a couple of times, and he seems to, you know, to speak fluently and to understand all other issues, but not this key word that could be done the difference.
Right, and also I can't tell for sure by the voice, but he sounds like a very senior captain to me. Just the tone of voice.
Just like me.
Really senior, but but he does. I mean, it doesn't sound like a newer captain, which the next flight we talk about, probably not as experienced just because of the way they hire for that airline and so on and so forth. So are we ready to move on to the next one? Let me just say that the way this one played out is TAM lands on runway 31 left at Kennedy. They wanted the longest runway because they still don't know for sure what's going to happen. On very short final, the controller says the nose gear still appears to be sideways, and do you wish to land? And they said, yeah, we're going to land. Like they didn't understand at all yet what the problem is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So there we are.
Well, wait, Rich. They decided to land in that configuration.
Yep.
But the good news about all this episode that I could call a confused episode is that when they touch down the main landing gear, the wheel goes like straight out again.
Yeah. Good. All right. So there's the situation. We're seeing there's some confusion. We're seeing that as a result of the confusion that's based on misunderstanding of terms. that this crew elected to land without making the preparations that are necessary for the type of situation. And I say that because the next one we're going to look at is JetBlue Flight 292. This happened 7 years earlier in California. JetBlue had taken off of Burbank Airport en route to Kennedy Airport, and they got about as far as Palmdale, California, and realized, because they got a message very similar to the one that TAM received, and it said nose wheel steering fault, and additionally, the JetBlue had a message that the landing gear shock absorber fault is also present. So what does that mean? Well, what it means to JetBlue is we're going to have to look at this and analyze it, but we know immediately that there's a problem. So they elected to go back to Long Beach, California, and they went there because that's a hub, a maintenance hub for JetBlue. And they figured, well, we'll land here, we'll go. Okay, so, but in the process, they thought, well, let's just do a flyby of the tower and have them take a look at it, which they do. And the tower says, your nose gear is sideways. Now they know what that means. They know immediately that, okay, we've got something to deal with here. And do you want to take it from there, Captain Alex?
Yes, thank you, Rich. And because they understood the situation, they declare a Mayday, whereas the crew of the time didn't want to. The controller did a specific question: did you want to declare an emergency? And they rejected. That's the time. Yeah. Whereas the JetBlue, they did declare an emergency, and of course, when you declare an emergency, the controllers and everybody wants to help, because cooperation in the air is the main principle of safety.
Yep.
Okay.
I know as a controller, whenever we hear Mayday, 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 that tells us make the seas part, clear the way. Exactly. Whatever we need, get it for us.
Exactly. So, and because they had a lot of fuel, because the route, as you said, was from Burbank to New York City, to New York, John F. Kennedy. Yeah. So they decided to burn out fuel as much as possible, which was, of course, a very good decision. But as a consequence, they have time to plan, and they planned for all possible scenarios. For example, the captain mentioned that he coordinated with the flight attendants in case what to do in case that the nose gear could collapse. Okay, right. This is important in any airplane. If the landing gear collapses, then the position of the airplane will be just like this.
Right.
And they cannot open, or they prefer not open these emergency doors in the rear, because then the slide will not touch the ground.
Right.
Do I make myself understood? Rich,
yes, you wouldn't want to go down that.
Exactly. So right. The captain and his first officer did a good job in terms of coordinating and planning ahead all possible.
Remember also, Captain Alex, where they decided, well, because of the situation with that nose gear, let's get the weight moved back a little bit from the center of gravity.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes. Thank you, Rich. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in the Airbus, well, I am a Boeing guy, but I had time to to review this procedure, and when under this nose landing gear situation, their checklist says to move at least 10 passengers backwards.
Yeah.
Depending of the position of the CG, how you say, the central of gravity, central of gravity. Yes, and this is to make lighter the front or the nose of the aircraft, in terms that once they touch down with the main landing gear, they could fly the nose wheel, the nose landing gear, as much as possible while reducing speed.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the situation. They're out, they've been dumping fuel for a while, and the captain elects to go to Los Angeles because of the bigger runways and probably better fire equipment and things, ambulance access, all of that. So he's made that decision. And while they're out there burning off the fuel, it's Los Angeles, the movie capital of the world. Yeah. Helicopters, newscopters. Remember how that went?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. All the media is out there in their helicopters taking pictures of this. Well, one of the reasons people love flying on JetBlue is you got this little screen, you know, in the back of the seat in front of you, and you can watch the news. What's on the news? JetBlue. And
you are inside of that airplane.
Yeah. I mean, they're seeing themselves on TV inside the plane. They are the story. Got to be a little frightening. But as frightening as it is, they know that preparations are being made. They know that things are happening. So, so they get some confidence from that, I'm sure. But they also know, okay, they've got a problem.
Yes. So, Rich, do you think it's time to make a conclusion from a language perspective?
Yes. Why don't we do that? Let's just quickly say that the JetBlue, after all of the work that they did, the aircraft landed, they held the nose up as long as possible. When it did go down, it stayed sideways, ultimately catching fire and melting the nose wheel, both the rubber and the metal, and put a little groove in the pavement. But the passengers exited orderly fashion. There was no big problem. So all ended well for actually both flights.
Yeah. Okay. So it is a it might be from what you just mentioned, it is easy to make a comparison between both flights. Okay, one was able to plan ahead because they know exactly what was happening, they declared an emergency. The other did not know exactly what was going on, rejected to declare an emergency, and did not plan ahead. Okay, fortunately, nobody was injured. Okay, well, from the linguistic perspective, Rich, I may say that it is important to non-English speaker crews to be aware how the meaning of one word could change things, and you need to learn how to negotiate the meaning of a specific word.
Exactly.
You can say
they clearly didn't understand that word sideways, but they didn't make a real effort to find out what it meant that I could see.
Yeah, exactly. But if you may say to the ATC, I cannot understand that word that you are saying. Please rephrase, for example.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't know the word rephrasing, no? Or exactly. You could say, okay, I know you say that something is wrong. Please describe in more detail what do you see? Okay. And maybe have they asked for a to rephrase or to say differently, or maybe make kind of questions to the ATC, 2 or 3 or 4 questions until you start to understand what is going on.
Yeah,
this
I
is-
remember Captain Alex, the controller that finally clears him to land. I'm talking about TAM now up in New York. The controller says your gear is sideways, say intentions or something like that. And they said, well, we'll go ahead and land. And he said, well, clear land. You know,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So, here's the title of the interview that I wrote about some moments ago. When one word makes the difference.
Yeah.
When one word makes the difference.
Yep. All right. So there was a case where one word made a tremendous difference. Luckily, everybody walked away from both flights. And
Yes,
well.
and finally, Rich, I may say that what make air a safer transport. I mean, the transport by airplane is a safer activity. Is that pilots and controllers have to agree on the same version of what is happening. Okay.
Right.
And sometimes, as this is the example, it is hard to achieve.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Captain Alex. This has been a really interesting discussion, and your perspective on it, being a linguist and an anthropologist and a pilot and all of the things you bring to it, really gives us some knowledge that we did not have before. And I appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners to the podcast appreciate it as well.
Well, thank you, Rich. I am still learning about linguistics. My master is, as you say, in cultural anthropologist, but I am one of those anthropologists who believes the way we talk is the way we define relationships and give us identity.
Well, let me ask you this, Captain Alex. Can we do this again sometime?
Sure, of course.
Perfect. Perfect. We've got a lot of situations that I'm sure you're familiar with, and I've got a few questions about situations I'm familiar with. So let's try and do this again, maybe on a regular basis.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Captain Alex. We'll see you next time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Bye, everybody.